In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure static trunking. So with Cisco devices, you can configure either a static trunk or a dynamic trunk. The dynamic trunk is called DTP. In this video, I'm going to configure static trunking between two switches. What I've got here is a layer 2 topology. There is no routing. So I've got host 1 and host 2. I've got two switches that connect them to server 1 and server 2. Since this is only a layer 2 topology, host 1 can only connect to server 1 because it's in the same VLAN. The same goes for host 2 that can only connect to server 2 because they're in the same VLAN. Host 1 and server 1 are assigned to VLAN 10, and host 2 and server 2 are assigned to VLAN 11. So if you want to forward multiple VLANs between two switches, you have to configure the connecting interfaces as trunks. Then when the frames arrive at the switch, the trunk will assign a tag to each frame. That's based on the VLAN membership. So when frames arrive at switch 2, for example, then the switch will read the VLAN membership and know where to forward the frames. And that's called VLAN tagging. And that's done with 802.1q encapsulation. So what I'll do in each switch is I'll configure the access ports for host 1 and host 2, and also assign them to the correct VLAN. I'll also configure the trunk interfaces that connect the two switches. In addition, I'm only going to allow VLAN 10 and VLAN 11 across the switch trunk. So we'll start with switch 1. So starting with host 1, it's connected to FA11 port. That'll be assigned to VLAN 10. So instead of interface, I can just type INT. So interface FA11. And switch port mode access. And switch port access VLAN 10. You notice the VLAN's automatically created. And now we'll go to host 2, and that's connected to FA01 port. So we'll just up arrow. We'll just edit this for 01. And go to up arrow again, switch port mode access. And this will be VLAN 11. Also created the VLAN. So the host ports are now configured. I'm going to configure the trunk on FA21 of switch 1. So we'll just up arrow again, change this to 2.1. This will be switch port mode trunk. And as mentioned, DTP is the default for Cisco. That's for dynamic trunking. But I want to turn off DTP frames here so there's no conflicts. So what I'll do is I'll just do the command switch port no negotiate. This is basically a best practice. And the last thing I want to do is just only allow VLAN 10 and 11. And that's also a good practice. You want to only limit just the VLANs that you want across that switch instead of all the VLANs. So that's switch port trunk allowed VLAN 10 and 11. If you want to add a range of VLANs, you would just use a hyphen. For example, VLAN 10-100. And that would allow a range of VLANs. So that's configured there on switch 1. So what I'll do is go back and just copy this to the startup config. So that's done. Now I'll go to switch 2 and do the same thing. Here I've got server 1 in VLAN 10, server 2 in VLAN 11. You can see the IP addresses there. Notice VLAN 10 is in the same subnet, 192.168.1. And VLAN 11 is assigned to 192.168.2. Typically, there's a direct correlation between subnet and VLAN. So server 1, starting with that's FA11, and that needs to be assigned to VLAN 10. Interface FA11. And switch port mode access. And switch port access VLAN 10. And there you see created the VLAN. And server 2 is connected to FA01. So we'll just up arrow. Hit this for 01. And up arrow again. It's going to be an access port. And I'll assign that to VLAN 11. VLAN was created. So those are the access ports for the servers done. And the switch to FA21 is going to be the trunk port. So I'll up arrow, make that a 2. This will be switch port mode trunk. And also switch port no negotiate to turn off DTP frames. And finally, switch port trunk allowed VLAN 10 and 11 only. It's also the native VLAN that I could change here, but I'm going to leave it at the default VLAN 1. That all looks pretty good. I'll just go back to enable prompt and just save this. Copy run to start. Now we'll go back to switch 1 and just verify the lab. So that's just a show run. So there's VLAN 1011. There's the access port. That's VLAN 11. It also had a description for troubleshooting, something such as link to host 2. There it is there. There's 01. That's VLAN 11. And fast Ethernet 11. That's VLAN 10. 21. That's the trunk. So there's the allowed VLAN 1011. It is a trunk. And everything looks pretty good there. I'll go to switch 2, do the same thing. There's VLAN 10 and 11 created. 01's assigned to VLAN 11. And 11 is assigned to VLAN 10. And there's the trunk there. Fast Ethernet 21. Thing looks good there too. Now we'll verify the trunk is operational. You can do that on switch 1 or switch 2. I'll just do show interfaces, trunk. You can see that FA21 is the trunk port. Mode is on, that means it's a static trunk. If it was DTP, it would be auto or desirable. Encapsulation's 802.1q, that's the default. That's an open standard. You'll see that on all the trunks. Status is trunking, so it's operational. And the native VLAN is 1, that's the default. So go here, VLAN's allowed on the trunk, 10 and 11. That's correct. Management VLAN is always allowed on the trunk, that's VLAN 1. So everything looks pretty good there. Now finally what I'll do is just a ping between VLAN 10 and server 1, and also VLAN 11 and server 2. So we'll ping 192.168.1.2. And works good. And server 2 is 192.168.2.2. So now this should not work since it's in a different VLAN and there's no inter-VLAN routing or routing at all. So that confirms that everything's working as it should. I'll go to host 2 now. Now I want to ping 192.168.2.2. And that's working as expected. And if I go to 1.2, this is server 1. And that's as expected as well, since you can't send traffic between different VLANs without routing. That confirms the trunking is working correctly, and that concludes the lab.